Hey friends, how you doing? My name's Steve. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If you've been here before, welcome back. I appreciate the support. Let's talk about music. Today we're going to talk about one of rock's most iconic guitar players. He's known for his raw energy, his aggressive style, and his melodic licks. Almost everybody knows his name, and almost everybody has heard at least one song he's played on. He's an amazing guitar player, and today we're going to talk about the one and only Slash. So who is Slash? Well, Slash was born Saul Hudson on July 23rd, 1965 in Hampstead, London. His mother, Ola Hudson, was a costume designer for rock legends like David Bowie, and his dad, Anthony Hudson, was an artist. So he came from a creative family. He was named Saul after a cartoonist named Saul Steinberg. Now, Slash is multicultural. His mother was African American, and his father was British. This exposed him to a diverse range of musical genres right from an early age. Slash has said that as a musician, he's always been amused that he's both British and black, particularly because so many Americans seem to aspire to be British, while so many British musicians, especially in the 60s, wanted to be black. He was raised by his father and his paternal grandparents in London while his mother moved back to America to work. And when he was about 6 years old, he and his father moved to America to be with his mother. His parents had one more son. His name was Albion Hudson, and his nickname was Ash. In 1974, his parents divorced, and Slash became a self-professed problem child. He chose to live with his mother, but stayed with his maternal grandmother, who he loved very, very much, whenever his mom was traveling for work. He did go with his mom sometimes on some of her trips, and when he would go with her, he met several movie stars and rock stars. Slash got his nickname from an actor named Seymour Cassel, who said that he was always in a hurry, zipping from one thing to another. That's why I called him Slash. Side note, before Slash got into music, he was into BMX racing. He was really heavy into it. He did a lot of freestyle, and he raced nationals and even some pro. When he was about 14 years old, he says that's when he had his awakening. He was chasing a girl, and he finally got her to invite him over to her house. They smoked some pot, and she put on the Aerosmith Rocks album, and he was blown away. This is the first time he'd heard it. He listened to it over and over and over, and that was it. He left the girl, forgot all about her, and he wanted a guitar. In 1979, he and Steven Adler, who eventually played drums for Guns N' Roses, they decided to form a band together. Steven was going to play guitar, so Slash was going to learn how to play bass. This never happened. The band never came to fruition. Slash took his first bass lesson, and the music teacher played Brown Sugar for him by the Stones. And that was when he decided, I don't want to play bass, I want to play guitar. His love for the guitar was ignited when his grandmother gave him a guitar. It was an old Spanish-style guitar with a single string, and that's what he played for quite a while before he finally put the other 5 strings on it. He started taking lessons, and Jeff Beck was his biggest influence. So at this point, BMX was out the window. He gave it up, and he started practicing 12 hours a day. All he did was play guitar. His first band was called Titus Sloan, and it was formed in 1981. Later in 83, he formed a new band called Road Crew, which was named after the Motorhead song We Are the Road Crew. In this band, Steven Adler, who was now playing drums, joined him. So they ran around, they were looking for a bass player, having some struggles, and they stumbled on a guy named Duff McKagan. Now they auditioned a bunch of singers, but after a year, they couldn't find anybody that they liked, and Slash had grown frustrated because Duff had a different work ethic than he and Steven did, so he broke up the band. Slash and Duff joined an established band called Hollywood Rose, which featured a lead singer named Axl Rose and a guitar player named Izzy Stradlin. Axl had fired the original guitar player because during a performance, he accidentally hit him in the back of the head with the headstock of his guitar. Pissed Axl off, and he fired him. So In comes Slash. Well, when Slash came in, Izzy had decided he was leaving the band, so he left. Duff and Slash played with the band for a short time, and then they broke up. Slash then auditioned for a new band called Poison, but he didn't get the gig because he wasn't going to wear makeup, so that went to CeCe DeVille. A new band called Guns N' Roses had been formed in 1985 by Axl Rose, Izzy Stradlin, and a guitar player named Tracy Guns. Guns to the Guns N' Roses. But there was a conflict between Tracy and Axl. Tracy left the band, so they went and asked Slash to join the band, which he did. Now, Tracy, the original guitar player, left the band because he just wasn't enjoying it anymore. He got to the point where he didn't want to go rehearsals, and they would call him for rehearsal, and he'd just say, I'm not coming. So they brought Slash in to fill in for him, but Tracy looked at that as the final nail in the coffin. That's why he walked away. It just wasn't good for him, and he wasn't enjoying it. It was a better move for him to step away. LA Guns is his band. Awesome band. I think it was a good choice for him. So at this time, they also needed a drummer, and they also needed a bass player. They brought in Steven Adler and Duff McKagan. Now you've got the full Guns N' Roses lineup. That's the original lineup. There they are. They started working on their songs, and the band had an explosive blend of hard rock, punk, and blues, and they were quickly gaining traction in the LA music circuit. They started opening for larger bands in 85 and 86, and that's the time when they wrote most of their songs. Now, Guns N' Roses, if you didn't know this, but they had a reputation for being pretty rowdy and pretty rebellious, and they became known as the most dangerous band in the world. Slash says that for some strange reason, G&R was the catalyst for controversy, because they even had problems before they got a record deal. They signed their deal in 1986 with Geffen Records. Side note, Slash's iconic look, the top hat, the long curly hair, the sunglasses, that became synonymous for the band's look. Well, you know where that came from? Before a show in 1985, Slash shoplifted the top hat from a store, and he shoplifted the belt from another store. It was a Native American style belt. He took it, fashioned it into a custom hat, and that's where it came from. He wore it, thought it felt really cool to be wearing it during the show, and it became his trademark. In January 1987, they began recording their first album, and they worked with a bunch of different producers. The album was recorded at Rumbo Records, and this is the studio of Daryl Dragon, best known as the captain of Captain and Tennille. Bet you kiddies don't know who that is, but what I would do, go on to Spotify, check out Love Will Keep Us Together or Muskrat Love. Yeah, it's not rock and roll, but that's what Daryl Dragon was known for. They worked with a producer named Mike Clint, who toiled for 18 hours a day splicing tape while they were recording. Now, this is back in the day. Now everything's digital. This is back in the day when everything was on tape. So if you wanted to, it's not like you just cut a little piece out. You had to physically cut a piece of tape out and splice it together to make it skip over a part, unless you re-recorded it. And tape is expensive, so it wasn't always the most economic way to just re-record. He'd work with Slash on structuring your solos and getting things together, and then he'd work with Axl on the vocals. Now, recording with Axl got to be very tedious because he insisted on recording a single line at a time because he wanted it to just be right. So once they started working on the vocals, most of the band wasn't even in the studio. Now, the budget on that first album was a staggering $370,000. Think about this. 1987 is when they recorded this for $370,000. Today's money, that's over $1 million for that album. That's crazy money. They released Appetite for Destruction in July of 1987, but the critics didn't think much of it. They said that the consumer success that they were seeing was just due to the taboo of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll mentality of the 1980s. They even dismissed it as an inferior copy to other bands like AC/DC and Aerosmith. They struggled to get any type of airplay for the album, primarily because of the raunchiness of several songs, and it debuted at 182 on the Billboard chart. It only sold 200,000 copies in the first several months, and Geffen was about ready just to bail him altogether. Al Curry, the Geffen general manager, convinced MTV to play the Welcome to the Jungle video once a night for 3 nights in a row and see what happens. Well, when they did that, it became the most requested video on MTV at the time. So he used the success of this to go to the radio stations and convince them to play Welcome to the Jungle, Paradise City, and Sweet Child of Mine. In the summer of 1988, that's when they hit #1 with a song called Sweet Child of Mine, which featured Slash's virtuosic guitar playing, very melodic, and people were drawn in. The album spent 4 non-consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard chart, and it was on the charts for a total of 147 weeks. To follow up, they released the next album called G&R Lies, which only had 8 songs on the album, but it sold 5 million copies in the US alone. Despite their huge success, Guns N' Roses was having a lot of internal conflicts because of substance abuse. Axl threatened to leave the band if other members didn't stop, quote, dancing with Mr. Brownstone. It's a reference to one of their songs, Mr. Brownstone, in regards to heroin abuse. Slash was one of them. He and the rest promised to give it up, as did Steven Adler, but Steven failed and he was fired from the band. In May 1991, they went on a 2.5-year tour called Use Your Illusion. They released 2 more albums in September of that year, Use Your Illusion 1 and Use Your Illusion 2, which debuted 2 and 1 respectively on the charts. This had never been done by any other band. That year, Izzy abruptly left the group in November, and Slash finished the tour in 1993. He wrote several songs which should have been for the follow-up album, but both Axl and Duff panned them, didn't want to use them. The band floundered back and forth and was able to come to terms on new songs for an album. So in 1996, Slash left the band. He said later that the reason he left the band was because Axl was constantly late to concerts. He was using the legal system to manipulate control of the band, and because Steven Adler and Izzy Stradlin had left the band as well. Now, before he left the band, during their downtime in 1995, Slash formed a new band called Slash's Snake Pit. It featured a bunch of artists from other bands, and they recorded the songs that he had written for the follow-up album that Axl and Duff had nixed. The album was called It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, and it was released in February of 1995. It did really well on the charts, and it sold over 1 million copies. They toured for a short time, but the band disbanded in 1996. After that, Slash started touring the country in a cover band called Slash's Blues Ball. Did that for a couple years. He reformed the Snake Pit again in 1999 and released a new album called Ain't Life Grand, but it didn't do so well. The band toured in support of AC/DC and then headlined for just a bit, but they disbanded in 2002. Slash reunited with Duff in 2002, and they found the chemistry was still there after playing together at a Randy Castillo tribute concert. The two of them co-founded a new band called Velvet Revolver, a supergroup that consisted of former G&R members as well as vocalist Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots. In June 2004, they released their debut album called Contraband, which debuted at #1 on the US charts. It sold 2 million copies and proved that Slash was still a force to be reckoned with. They toured in support of the album for 1.5 years, and they won a Grammy for the song Slither. Great song. They released their second album, Libertad, in July of 2007 and went on tour in support of it. In March 2008, Scott Weiland announced to the audience at a concert that the band was going to break up. This was their final tour. So in April of 2008, he was fired from the band. Slash said there were chemical issues, drug issues involved, and that was the reason for the split. But the band, Velvet Revolver, was still together without Scott. In 2010, they started looking for a new singer, but they didn't find one. So at that point, they decided to leave the band on hiatus and focus on other projects. In September of 2009, Slash started working on his first solo album, and he found it to be liberating. He said it was great working on his own, away from band politics. The album was titled Slash, and it featured guest appearances from a roster of rock legends like Lemmy from Motorhead, Fergie. I wouldn't call her a rock legend, but Fergie was on there. Adam Levine, I wouldn't call him a rock legend either. Chris Cornell, there's a rock legend. and there were many others on there. It debuted at number 3 on the US charts in 2010. Slash also released a Japanese-only single called Sahara, and it featured a Japanese vocalist, Koshi Inaba, and it charted number 4 on the Oricon singles chart and number 6 on the Billboard chart in the Hot 100 in Japan. It received an award called the Western Single of the Year in Japan. Slash went on his first world tour to support his album with singer Miles Kennedy of Alter Bridge. He also appeared on the album. They opened on one of the legs of Ozzy Osbourne's Scream World Tour. Slash started working on his second solo album in 2011, and he was collaborating with Miles Kennedy, Todd Kerns, and Brent Fitz, who had toured with him. The band name that they called it was Slash, featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. Their first album was called Apocalyptic Love, and it was released on May 22, 2012. Debuted number 2 in the Canadian album chart, and in 2013, Slash received an award for the Best Guitarist of 2012 from Livewire magazine. Slash toured the summer of 2014 with Aerosmith, opening for their Let Rock Rule tour, and in September of that year, their second Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators album, World on Fire, was released, and it debuted at number 10 on the Billboard 200. On December 25, 2015, Guns N' Roses confirmed that Slash and Duff would be returning to the band, and they would be headlining Coachella in 2016. It had been about 23 years since Slash had played with Guns N' Roses, and they did a secret warm-up gig at the Troubadour in LA on April 1st, 2016. After this, they went on tour in the Not in This Lifetime tour, and it was a massive success, and it concluded in 2019. September 2018 saw the release of the third album of Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, and they did another tour, and then in February of 2022, they released their fourth album on the newly formed Gibson Guitars record label. They started a tour in February of 2022, and they started it in my old stomping grounds, Portland, Oregon. Over the span of his career, Slash has played on a bunch of other people's music. He's done so much session work, it's a long list, and you've probably heard him and didn't even know he was on the album. I'm going to try to hit these really fast and furious because it's a long list. I'll see how quick I can get through them. He played lead guitar on Michael Jackson's song Give In To Me on the Dangerous album. In 1995, he played on DS on the Michael Jackson History Past, Present, Future Book No. 1. In 1997, he played on the song Morphine off the remix album Blood on the Dance Floor, History of the Mix. In 2001, Slash played on the song Privacy on Jackson's final studio album, Invincible. He also joined him on stage for several performances, as well as at the 1995 MTV Video Music Awards on the song Black or White and on Billie Jean. In 1990, he played on Wiggly Wiggly on Bob Dylan's album Under the Red Sky. He played with Lenny Kravitz on Always on the Run in 1991. In 1993, he played on The Stone Free, a tribute to Jimi Hendrix, performing I Don't Live Today with Paul Rogers. He was a guest at Carole King's 1994 live concert, and he appeared with her on The David Letterman Show. In 1996, he collaborated with Marta Sanchez on a flamenco-inspired song called Obsession Confession. He played with Alice Cooper later that year at Sammy Hagar's Cabo Wabo Club in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. In 1997, he played with rapper Old Dirty Bastard. He also played with the band Fishbone. He performed on a song by Japanese musician Jay called But You Said I'm Useless. He provided music for the soundtrack of Quentin Tarantino's movie Jackie Brown. He performed on the Insane Clown Posse's song Hall of Illusions. In 2002, he played on Eland's Street Child. In 2003, he played on the Yardbirds' Over, Under, Sideways, and Down. In 2006, he played on a cover of Summertime for Derek Sheridan. In 2009, he was on Rihanna's single Rockstar 101. He contributed a song for Disney's Phineas and Ferb movie Across the Second Dimension called Kick It Up a Notch. You think that's all? Not even close. He's a self-described film buff, and he's had several small bit parts in movies and TV series. Here we go. In 1988, he and his G&R bandmates appeared in Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry movie, Deadpool. In 1994, he played DJ Hank in an episode of Tales from the Crypt. He was a guest star on Cartoon Network's Space Ghost Coast to Coast. He played Billy Butterface on the show Metalcopolis on Adult Swim. In 1999, he was the host of the Miss America Bag Lady pageant in the underground comedy movie 1997. He played himself on Howard Stern's Private Parts. 1998, he played himself on Drew Carey Show. In 2003, he voiced himself in the animated kids show Kid Notorious. In 2005, he was on Mad TV. 2009, he was in Sacha Cohen's Bruno. In 2009, he was a guest mentor on the Rock and Roll Week of American Idol. 2010, he formed a new film company called Slasher Films, a horror film company. The first film, called Nothing Left to Fear, was released in October of 2013. In 2014, he was on an episode of The Talking Dead. He's written books. He's a pinball enthusiast. He helped design the 1994 Guns N' Roses pinball machine, as well as the 2020 Jersey Jack, and provided music for the 1998 game Viper Night Drivin'. He had a playable character in Guitar Hero 3, Legends of Rock, and provided a master track for Welcome to the Jungle for the Rocksmith Guitar Learning Simulator. He's also an artist, designing the logos for several pre-G&R bands as well as the circular G&R logo, and he provided artwork for the 2012 Aerosmith album Music from Another Dimension. This guy doesn't stop working. Now, Slash has been married twice, first to a woman named Renee Saran, and they were married from 92 to 97. Then he married Perla Farah in 2001. They divorced in 2014. They have 2 kids, London and Cash. Currently in 2003, he's not married. Side note, his son London has a band called Suspect 208. This band features Robert Trujillo of Metallica fame. He's the bass player for Metallica. Features his son on bass, and Scott Weiland's son, Noah, is on vocals. London plays guitar. Slash has been sober since 2006. This was a few years after he was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, which is a form of congestive heart failure. They say it was caused by his many years of substance abuse. Originally, he was given 6 days to 6 weeks to live, but through physical therapy and an implanted defibrillator, he's survived. Slash is an honorary board member of the group Little Kids Rock. It's a nonprofit that is designed to reestablish music programs in disadvantaged schools. He has visited with these students. He's jammed with them. He's talked to them. He's provided guitars. He's done a lot for the program. He believes that being a musician is good for the character. It teaches you a lot of discipline, and it's a good creative outlet. He's a board of trustee for the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. He loves reptiles, if you didn't know that. Most of his pictures you see him with snakes. He's got snakes all over the place. Before he had kids, he had a bunch of snakes, but he got rid of them because he was worried about them, not being good around the kids. Slash has received numerous awards and recognition, including a star on the Rock Walk of Fame. He was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the classic G&R lineup. He's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's been named by several publications as one of the greatest guitar players of all time. And has even had the West Hollywood mayor name August 26th Slash Day. He owns more than 100 guitars, but he's best known for playing a Gibson Les Paul. His first guitar, though, wasn't a Gibson Les Paul. It was a Memphis Les Paul copy. It was really special to him until he learned that it wasn't that great a guitar. So the next guitar that he had that he really loved and wished he could hang on to was a BC Rich Mockingbird, and he had that for years. He didn't get his first Gibson until Appetite for Destruction, and he has used the same Gibson since that album. He's used it on every album since. It's the most special guitar he owns. Here's some tidbits about Slash you might not know. Years back, in one of the dressing rooms at the Hard Rock in Orlando, he saw a guitar sitting there. No one claimed it. He swiped it. Later, 2007, Hard Rock in Vegas was honoring him. He brought the guitar and gave it back to him. In 1981, Joe Perry of Aerosmith sold his prized 1958 Gibson Les Paul because he needed some Christmas money. Some years later, in 91, he had decided that he wanted to get that guitar back, so he started looking for it, and he found out that Slash owned it. He went to Slash and begged him to sell it back to him, but Slash wouldn't do it. And Joe wasn't too upset about it, because he said if he had had the chance to get Jeff Beck's white guitar from the Wired album, he would have taken it in a heartbeat. In September of 2000, Joe Perry was playing with Cheap Trick celebrating his 50th birthday, and Slash gave him back the guitar as a birthday present. Slash's influence on music goes well beyond his guitar prowess. He's not just a musician, he's a symbol of the rock and roll lifestyle, as you can see. His solos are instantly recognizable, and his style has inspired countless of aspiring guitarists. He's lived a colorful life, sometimes not making the best choices, sometimes making the worst. But he's fared well, and he's still tearing it up today. He's been through great adversity, walking headlong into the fire, substance abuse and all, but he's overcome it, and he's succeeded. He's risen to the top. He's truly a rock and roll legend. People young and old know his name, and his signature style stands out. I have no doubt that he's going to continue to make music and continue to be an inspiration to musicians for years and years to come. He is truly one of the greatest guitar players that's ever played. Now for new music you should really be checking out, I'm going to recommend you check out the band Dorothy. They're out of LA, they're an American rock band. They formed in 2014 and they feature the vocalist Dorothy Martin. Their music is a mix of solid riffs, tasty leads, and her sultry vocals. They're reminiscent of AC/DC, the White Stripes, and Black Keys. They deliver an updated bluesy classic rock sound that'll have your fingers tapping, and you're going to love her voice. They have some great songs, and their latest release is Gifts from the Holy Ghost from 2022. I would recommend checking out the title track or It's a Beautiful Life. It's a great song. You could go back to 2016 and check out After Midnight on their Rock is Dead album too. That one is great. Any of the songs you're gonna dig, but those three I think are just awesome. If you want to check out Dorothy on newer stuff, she was the feature vocalist on Nina Strauss's Victorious, which was just released in 2023. Great song. Nina Strauss is a great guitar player too. So check them out. Let me know what you think. I think you're going to really enjoy them. I think you'll like their stuff. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you did like it, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more content like this, consider subscribing. Let me know in the comments what you thought. And if there's someone special you'd like me to check out, let me know. I'd be happy to do it. Until next time, no matter what they say, rock's not dead. Take care.